Alright gang, today I'm going to show you how to do a basic airbrush workup of base tones, mid-tones, and highlights. We're going to start on this little Terminator dude here, get things going. This is going to be a series, so I'm going to show you how to paint this guy from start to finish. Get it in focus here. I'm going to start out with my Renegade Chrome from Badger. I'm using my 0.5 needle. It's a good base coating needle. Nice broad spray. Going to start with a really transparent layer of dark gray blue from Monument, of course. Standard operating procedure, flow improver. Get a little in there. We're going to keep this mixture very transparent because we're going to rely on that zenithal highlight. If you don't understand zenithal highlight or pre-shading, I do have a video back a couple of weeks that will explain that. I'll put a little link thing, whatever the YouTube magic is, to make sure that you guys can check that out. But here I am just kind of spraying a really thin, transparent, almost glaze. Essentially, the paint is so thin that you can still see the shadows, the highlights, everything you've built up in the priming stage with the zenithal. I'm sorry it's a little out of focus there, but I'm still getting used to filming this way. Completely different from streaming, but I'll get it down, I assure you. But the basics are that we want to do a nice thin transparent coat all over the mini, in the shadows, in the highlights, everything. Every square inch is going to get this really deep dark gray blue. We're going to kind of use that to build our foundation. So you can see there's a nice even coat all over everything that's going to be blue. The gun is going to be yellow, the sword's going to be yellow. Certain areas that I knew I didn't need blue paint, I didn't go hardcore. But the main armor is nice and even. You can still see all those shadows and highlights. So now we're just going to dump out the residual. This is an important step. We're not going to clean the cup here. We're going to use what's in there to kind of mishmash a secondary color here. I'm going to go to Faded Ultramarine from Pro Acryl. Fine folks at Creature Caster. Sorry about that. And I'm going to put a little flow improver in the cup there, and about a 50-50-ish mix here of the ultramarines to what's already in the cup. I'm not looking for a really bright color here. I'm just looking for something to kind of make a mid-tone. I'm going to backflow the needle just in case any of that darker paint's stuck in there. Now it's important to keep the airbrush at about a 45-degree angle while you're spraying here, and just kind of give it a nice solid coat. Again, we're working semi-transparent. The paint's a little more opaque this time. I didn't put as much flow improver in the cup. We're going to speed it up here, but you'll get the idea. Just make sure it's a good even coat. You don't want to turn the model upside down because we want those shadows to stay. We've already built that shadow with the zenithal. We built it with the glaze of the darker color. Now it's important to start building up the mid-tones and start working on our highlights. When we get to the highlight colors, it'll be even more bright. It'll just pop. Just keep working the miniature. Spray a little bit, move on to another area. Keep it moving. It'll dry by the time you come back to that area. I'm also going to do a top-down. From this stage on, I'm always going to do a top-down. I'm not being super selective, though. Going back to the ultramarine. Pure ultramarine. Faded ultramarine. This is a clean cup, a clean needle, going right back to the Faded Ultramarine. This is going to be kind of a pre-highlight, if you will. I'm going to be a little more selective with this. Start spraying on certain smaller patches. I'm going to give this kind of square top of his back more of a concentrated spray. I'm actually holding my airbrush at a much higher degree. I'm more or less about 20 degrees. Well, I guess that would be 70 degrees, not 20 degrees. We're going the wrong way. We're about 70 degrees off the top of the miniature there. Another top down, but I'm trying to be a little more selective, trying to let that first mid-tone kind of stay where it's at. Obviously not messing with any of the shadows. As you see me turn it over, it's really dark on some of those areas. That's what we're looking for. Just keep smoothly putting on a layer until it looks nice and smooth. You can see the shadows are still there, but we're starting to get a little bit of a pre-highlight, if you will. Now I'm going to switch over to my Sotar. This is a 0.2 needle in the Sotar. It just gives me a little finer detail. I'm going to make a little mix of light neutral gray and faded ultramarines. This is going to be the very first, very fine highlight, if you will. I switched over to my fine detail brush so I can really pick out smaller areas and concentrate things. I also add a little bit of water here just because I want to make sure that this is not going to overwhelm everything. I want it to be very fluid, if you will. Here I am, I'm picking out the very tops of the kneecaps, anything that's protruding out and predominant. You don't have to necessarily be super methodical about this. You don't have to be true to lighting, if you will, but if it looks like it should be highlighted, even though it might be in somewhat of a shadow, highlight it. This is a miniature. This isn't a Van Gogh or anything. You know, we're not going for anything crazy. You see me working on the shoulder pad here. I'm actually staying towards the center and letting that darker blue stay on the outside. Keep working at it. Hit the backs of the Achilles area. Notice I'm using my finger to mask off that leg, and now I'm doing it to mask off that butt flap there. As I highlighted both areas, I'm masking what's underneath it so the overspray doesn't screw up what I've already worked on. Coming back, hitting up this top of the wrist there. Not really going towards that elbow because it's in extreme shadow, but making sure I get the sides of the ankles and really working on this shoulder pad here. I actually work on the power claw a little bit, and then I realized that's going to be yellow, so that was wasted paint, but whatever, it's minuscule. Then of course we want to focus on the head. The head is the focal point of the miniature precisely, so I'm going to hit it with a nice little almost 100% top down. You can see it start to build up. Then I'm also going to kind of focus on those little respirator cans on either side. I'm actually going to come from the left side of the head, spraying down on an angle towards the right can, and flip it over to do the other way. So you can see all those kind of first highlights, if you will. It's really starting to make these minis pop. So now I'm going to dump out the residual, and just like before, I'm going to keep what's in the cup. You know, dump out all the extra. Put in your flow improver, and then I'm just going to go straight light neutral gray. I'm only going to put 2 drops in here. The reason being is what's in the cup is going to influence it towards blue. I still want this to be somewhat blue-gray. Now this is where I'm going to really kind of turn my air down and pick out these finer highlights. See how small that dot is on my thumb? Now I'm going to focus on the forehead and those 2 little respirator cans. It's okay if a little bit of that overspray hits those like collarbone areas, that's fine. And then go back to the shoulder pad, and I'm going to focus on more so that bone skull and let the overspray kind of influence things so that it fades from the very sharp corner of the darkest blue into the center of the panel where it's brighter. Same thing on this little square, whatever the hell this thing is, on the back of the armor. And then again, I'm masking off the backs of the heels there so I can get the butt flap. And I'm only highlighting about that last quarter of the butt flap there. So you can see it's nice and popping now. And then again, I'm going to hit the backs of the Achilles area and the heels there. Not going any higher up into the calf or anything like that. You'll want to focus on the tips of the feet, you know, the toe areas. You're going to want to focus on anything that's going to have a predominant standout in the miniature that will be up towards the light. You don't want to flip this model upside down because then you'll destroy all of your shadowing. So I'm going back and I'm kind of just, this is a stylized highlight right there. I don't really need any highlight on that hand because it's in shadow, but it's a predominant part of the figure, and it's going to create that contrast when I paint that gun, bolt gun, or silver, or whatever you want to paint it. So there he is. He's all done. Looking pretty good. Nice contrast. Let it focus there. You got that kind of panel shading, if you will. Things are looking good. You could leave him as is without any shading, etc. He's good to go. You don't even need to really edge highlight. He looks good. He's ready to pop. Of course, I'm going to go on and show you how to do the yellow here too. This is liquid mask. It's a resin. I actually hate this stuff, but for certain details, you got to do what you got to do. Make sure you use the crappiest brush you have. I've got these like cheap 15-cent synthetic brushes that I use for convention classes when somebody doesn't have a brush. They are what they are, guys. Make sure it's a crappy brush, and go ahead and mask up that claw, mask up anything that is right up against the detail that you don't want to be yellow. We're going to be spraying yellow now. I'm going to use Silly Putty to mask off everything else, but to get that finer detail that I can't necessarily get with the Silly Putty, I'm going to do the liquid mask first. Like I said, we're going to use some Silly Putty. Don't buy the expensive black putty stuff in a tin can for 15, 16 bucks. That's ridiculous. You can get this stuff on Amazon for $2. It doesn't stick, but it stays on your mini. It masks it off. It won't pull the paint up. It won't do anything. It's genius masking material. And if that's not enough, well, they got the Big Egg. The Big Egg is badass. Look at that. There's a ton of Silly Putty in there. You can do a whole squad. You can tell I've used that one a bit. I'm not going to spend a lot of time masking this off on video here. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I like to use a skewer. Shout out to Susie QQ for helping me with the sculpting part of things. I was using silicone sculpting tools and having a bad time because it sticks to sculpting tools. Use wooden tools, use hard plastic tools, just manipulate it around. We're not worried so much about the areas where you might have to repaint later. All I'm strictly doing is covering up everything that I just painted blue that's going to remain blue. Things like the back of the bolt gun there. I don't give a damn if it gets yellow on it because I'm going to paint it silver later. So I'm not going to waste my time being too precise masking that off. I'm going to make sure that I get all the cracks and crevices of the blue armor covered up. Notice I'm taking my time around this pauldron, this shoulder pad here. That's because that's going to be sprayed yellow. So there he is. He kind of looks like a Muck the Pokemon, I think was his name. Just a blob of crap. But everything that's not supposed to be painted yellow is covered. That's not going to be repainted later. You know, that wolf tail is a little exposed. I'm going to paint that brown later. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use some light umber from Acryl. This will be just a good base coat. I don't want to spray yellow on blue because that'll turn it green, right? So I'm going to base coat it with brown since I want to kind of get an Everland sunset type base. I'm going to go with the brown. Of course, a little fall improver, a little bit of the paint. There's really no set rule to this. We're not doing it transparent. I do want an opaque base layer because this is also going to build my shadows like we did with the blues. We're going to build shadows off of a darker color. I went with the umber because it's a little bit warmer, but it's still got that depth to really kind of influence a shadow. I'm still going to use that zenithal. You can see the blue is very dark on the underside of the casing of that gun. We can still see the zenithal we worked on. So working thinner layers, but the paint's more opaque than the blue. And just kind of spray it all over wherever you're going to be painting yellow. So the top of the power claw, actually all over. You want to make sure you get the bottoms too. Kind of spray it thin, spray it lightly, make sure everything gets a good coat, but it's not so opaque that you're not seeing that zenithal. You want to really utilize that zenithal. I'm spraying thin layers here with opaque paint, so it'll help build it up slowly. That's the key. Build it up slowly. If you overwhelm it, then it's just going to look like you brush painted it, and there's no point in doing the airbrush. I'm taking my time here, making sure that everything has a nice even coat. That shoulder pad's going to really pop once we do the 2 yellow coats on it. Keep working the miniature. The key here is just to make sure that everything is smooth, even at this beginning stage. Yes, I am going to go up 2 other tones here, like an Everland Sunset and a very bright yellow. But if you start with a splotchy base layer, it's going to transfer all the way up the line. So you really want to make sure that you keep things smooth. And if you're having issues with brush control, then take a piece of paper and kind of practice doing a couple of passes to make sure everything's smooth here. I forgot to mention I am back to my Renegade Chrome with the 0.5 needle. You can do this all with a 0.5, a 0.3 needle. I just like going back to the Sotar because I have it. It's a great tool in the arsenal to have. If you have something like a Patriot that can jump, or even the Chrome can go from a 0.2 to a 0.5 needle. All it is just switching out the cone and the needle. By all means, utilize what you have. It can be done with a 0.5 needle all the way across the board. You're not going to get super fine detail with 0.5, but this can all be done, no problem. When I'm doing a batch of 10 Marines, Necrons, whatever, I usually just stick with my Renegade. Keep it going. Make sure everything's nice and smooth, nice and vibrant, especially on top. There he goes. You can still see it's really dark underneath, but it's somewhat bright on top. Now this is going to be a little tricky. I got to emulate Everland Sunset. I can't tell you exactly what the mix was here because it took a couple of back and forths, but those are the 3 colors I'm using, and I got that. Throw some in the cup of the brush here with a little flow improver. And in case you missed it, that was golden yellow, that was yellow ochre, and burnt orange from Acryl. Now, just like the blue, I don't want to flip this model over. I'm going from about 45 degrees out, spraying a good coat. I might turn it over just a little bit to kind of influence that shadow towards more of a yellow tone, but I'm not going crazy with it. I'm going to stay transparent. I'm going to keep the miniature moving and keep spraying thin layers until I get a nice, even coat. Keep moving it. Spraying it. I do a little bit of a top down at some point. I don't know if I got it on video or not, but keep moving the miniature. It might take 2 or 3 different layers of this color because yellow is a little difficult. That's why we laid down the brown. Yep, there I go, painting the shadows, but I'm barely glazing over that just to kind of influence it more towards the yellow than brown. Giving it a little bit of basically a glaze. Keep the miniature moving. And come back, and there you go. It's looking smooth. Everything looks good. It's ready for some bright highlights. And for the bright highlight, I'm going to use just straight golden yellow right in the cup. This will really make it pop with that Everland Sunset style yellow underneath it, and then this golden yellow right on top. Load up the brush, a little flow improver, a little golden yellow. Pretty standard operating procedure. If you've seen any of my videos, you know by now that that's pretty much the 1-2 punch. A little bit of the Everland Sunset. Again, I'm going to keep it somewhat transparent this time. I like to use my final highlight in a very transparent layer just because I want that transition from the mid-tone to the highlight to be very soft. Now I'm still using my Renegade here. I could have switched back to my Sotar for more pinpoint accuracy, but I did want to show you that you can do this with one brush. It's not that big of a deal. You don't have to have a 0.2 and a 0.5 to combo off of. But here I am just being a little more detailed. I'm kind of more or less spot highlighting here. I'm putting the needle right at the round point of that shoulder pad, but not going towards the back side of it where that brown is. I'm keeping it more on the top down, and I'm giving it a little circle highlight so that the outside edges are still that brown or that Everland Sunset influence color, where the center is that bright highlight of basically it's flash gets yellow for you GW paint users. super bright yellows that the Space Wolves are known for. That combo of gray, blue, and yellow mixed in with blacks. Just keep things moving. Once you're done, it should look a little something like this. You can still see those shadows and the browns and the Everland sunset type tone. And then when you look top down, it's bright. And to take silly putty off, it's really simple. If you got a little extra left over, touch it to itself and pull it off. It doesn't stick, and it hasn't affected anything paint-wise underneath. I've heard of people using blue tack for it. Don't use blue tack to mask off your miniature. Speaking of blue tack, I use really crappy Elmer style blue tack for the removal of the resin kind of liquid mask. I hate this stuff. I've said it once before in the video. This stuff sucks. It really sucks to work with. Don't leave it on your mini for a long period of time. Like overnight's about as good as it gets. Use the sticky tack to kind of remove it off the miniature, work with it a bit, and then there you go. There's essentially the finished miniature. Everything looks smooth, everything looks uniform. There is a little bit of a blemish up here, so I've got to go in with a brush and tidy up a little bit. That's normal, that's fine. Go back to your golden yellow. You might want to put a little bit of brown on the palette just to mix in midtones if you got to get into your shadow or whatnot. I think we've all used a paintbrush before, so I'm not really going to spend a ton of time on this, but there was a ding there right on the top highlight. I'm going to touch it up with the brush here, and then of course right on top of the power claw there's that kind of blemish up there. I could turn it into a battle scar. You don't have to touch it up. If you're going for war torn, turn it into a battle scar. And there he is, perfectly base coated. Everything's good to go. You could leave him just like this and have a good day. That's not all. We can go on, we can do all kinds of stuff to this thing. I'm saying you don't have to shade it, you don't have to highlight it, you don't have to be crazy. You can then paint your metallics, paint your other colors however you want, dry brush, whatever you want. But the armor is done. It can be done. I'm not going to keep it there. I'm going to, over the course of a few weeks, show you how to paint different methods on this entire mini until it's finished. We're going to go over the fur. We're going to go over the cloth. We're going to go over the bone. We're going to go over the metallics. We're going to go over how I wash. We're going to go over how I highlight. This is going to be kind of a continuation series on just this miniature. But if you're just trying to get that quote-unquote battle-ready look, don't worry about it. This is perfect. It's highlighted. It pops. Everything looks good. You can see all the detail. You're good to go. As always, guys, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for checking out the video. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any questions, or maybe you want to see some different topics covered here. I would love to tailor things more towards your guys' needs. This is going to be more of a tutorial-based channel, so let me know what you guys are thinking below. And as always, I'm going to have a list of materials used in the information section, whatever it's called, down below. Check all that out. And of course, you can check me 3 days a week on Twitch. I live stream Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time until midnight. And on Saturdays, 4:30 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. I'll see you guys later. Thank you again so much for checking out the video. Have a good one.